back to my YouTube channel. This is the second episode, and today's episode is about bipolar disorder. Bipolar is a very complex condition. It affects people differently, but from an outside perspective looking in, it sounds very exhausting to deal with it, with the extreme highs and extreme lows. It just sounds exhausting and lonely. My second guest is my friend Nikki, because I find her very inspiring here in Plymouth because of her website Marbles Lost and Found, as well as her support group. I've been there myself. It's very nice and very supportive. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, you could have bipolar itself, you could have ADHD, or you could be autistic like me. But it's been very helpful, and Nikki's going to talk more about her condition and Marbles itself. So hope you like the video. When was you diagnosed with bipolar, or do you want to go before that?
I don't mind. I can go with first diagnosed, which is quite a while. So I was diagnosed at 30, and I'm 47 now.
Okay.
So 17 years ago.
Wow.
So very late in life.
Yeah, how, like...
Well, what it was actually a GP that recognised, I went in to see him. I'd had a major breakdown. I'd had a relationship breakdown. And I got really poorly, and my behaviour was very up and down. I was also drinking a lot. And I went to see a GP, and he noticed through my history that I was very up and down. Mm-hmm. So he referred me to psychiatry. Those were the days you went straight through to psychiatry. Yeah. And it took them 2 years to give me the diagnosis of bipolar. Yeah. I was given borderline personality disorder, first of all. Mm-hmm. Until the way psychiatry works, especially with bipolar, is they introduce medications to see how you react. Yeah. So if you were to give somebody with just generalised depression, an antidepressant would uplift them, but wouldn't make them too high. If you give that to somebody with bipolar, it activates one mood, so it can make you catapult and can cause psychosis. Wow, okay. So they would do things like give me an antidepressant, see how I would react. Yeah. They would see I would go quite high, so then they would do something like add an antipsychotic and a mood suppressant to bring my mood down, and that's how I was monitored. So the way psychiatry look at it with bipolar is very up and down. Yeah. So they're looking for your graph to not be so much like this, like pyramids, but to be a bit more stable. Steadier. So that's the whole point of medications. It took me a long time to realise that medications were only 30 to 40% of recovery. The rest is down to you. But medications are there to help stabilise you for longer periods of time between episodes. But it took them 2 years to finally give me a diagnosis. So it was quite a while.
With the Marbles support group and all that. Don't know if you want to talk about that. What made you start doing that?
Well, it's a couple of things. So when I first got diagnosed, I spent the first 5 years highly medicated, and I lived my label. I would go with the ups, go with the downs. I did used to drink, and I used to do drugs, okay, which would obviously heighten those or escalate things like hypos, and also cause massive depressive episodes, okay, and stuff like that. And one night I hit really bad crisis. I wanted to take my own life. I mean, I get suicidal a lot, it's part of the condition, but I actually had intent. So my other half couldn't face A&E, and a new cafe had opened up called Headspace. Okay. It's a crisis cafe. So my other half decided to take me to Headspace, and there was a gentleman there called Cy Parham. He was lived experience himself, and I had a one-to-one with him, and it was like a beacon of light. He had his own story to tell, mm-hmm, and it was inspiring to me that he was now in a place where he was helping me, yeah, despite his struggles. Okay. Things like addiction, things like that, obviously mental health issues with that as well. And I kind of came out, number one, my life had been saved by this guy. He got me to rechannel those thoughts and feelings about how I was feeling about myself. Yeah. But I came out of there thinking, I've got to help myself, but I I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know
You have to do something.
I have to do something, or I'm going to live in this continuous circle.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, I actually had bipolar up. And in those couple of days before I had this massive high, I'd started looking at bipolar, so I was started to watch like the Stephen Fry documentaries, Ruby Wax. I went for celebrities that I knew. Kerry Katona, but she was a bit of a mess, so I was a bit like,
maybe too much on that.
yeah. But Stephen Fry I found very
I don't know who that is.
inspiring. He's done a documentary which he shows his depressive sides and his ups. Ruby Wax has written many books and studied neurology, so it was really interesting. And I started to realise that there was so much out there, but it was either very clinical, hard to read, or all over the place. So I came up with an idea. Why don't we have a space where everything is in one place? And it literally was a bipolar idea.
Okay, cool.
And then I had a call from Headspace for a follow-up, and I went back in and saw Si, and I must have mentioned marbles to him, and he was the first one to say to me, if you go forward with this, I'll support you. He was based at the Gel and Cutting Centre, and now he works within organisations, and now I work and network with him. But I will always be grateful for the advice and the night he saved my life, because it was that
changed it.
That ignited the marbles idea.
That's cool.
And then it was just an idea, and I had a friend who was a web designer who said she'd do the website, and then it took me just over a year of non-stop working. Marbles was born 6 years ago.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with the future with marbles?
I hope to change the way we look at mental health in the system would be lovely. I believe that people need more awareness on things like diagnosis and well-being.
Yeah.
So for me, what would have helped, and I hope what marbles will do is try and enforce it, is if you're given a diagnosis, you should be educated on that diagnosis.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
maybe sometimes you don't need a prescription for sertraline. Maybe you need a prescription to go to a well-being awareness course.
Know what's going on.
But what would have been helpful to me is when they gave me the bipolar diagnosis, they should have said, okay, we're going to send you some classes to learn about what bipolar is, how to cope with it, medications, because I mean, even the medications for me were a learning curve. The first 5 years I could hardly get out of bed, because psychiatry very much look at mental health conditions as we're trying to stop you from feeling that way by highly medicating you so you can't do anything. So I was on things like quintiapine, just couldn't function.
Okay.
I still managed to work, but I had a lot of time off sick.
Yeah.
Which doesn't go down with employers very well.
No.
So yeah, it's all kind of a mixed bag, so to speak.
That's cool.
And I decided to try and do something about it. And when I was developing marbles, I noticed I had better periods of stability. Why?
Something to focus on?
Something to focus on and understanding.
Yeah.
I started to think, okay, I'm feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? Have I taken my medication? Have I been drinking? Have I had enough sleep? So you kind of weigh up all your options and try and think about what's going on. I started to do that a lot more, which in turn helped me to absorb how I'm feeling and cope with how I'm feeling. Which before I wouldn't do, I would run with that feeling. So if I was really high, I'd run with that feeling. If I was really low, I would just be cancelled day.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, everything was just a learning curve in the beginning. And marbles has actually given me purpose.
Yeah, I see that in you.
It's definitely purpose. And a new life, a new way of living my life. And also not being ashamed.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stigma attached to mental health.
Still is.
Yeah, and I think there always will be.
You think so?
I think there always will be, yeah.
What would you say to anyone that's struggling with their mental health now, watching this?
Talk to people, talk to like-minded people.
Yeah.
One of the best things you can do is talk to others with lived experience. Why? Because they get it. And I think with mental health, when I was first diagnosed, it's a very lonely experience because we are all very different and not one of us are going through the same thing. We may feel the same, but we're not going through the same thing. So I think it's highly important to talk to others that get it.
Yeah.
And also when people say it's all in your head,
Yeah, it's more than
it
that.
is all in your head.
It's more than that though. I think like physically and mentally it affects everything.
It does. It's like a ripple effect on your body. Because, the brain is the biggest organ of the body and it controls everything.
Yeah.
So when you're firing off the wrong signals, it can be
affecting everything else.
It can affect everything else. And I've had to learn with bipolar, I'm on medications, that will shorten my life.
Okay.
I'll probably end up with a heart condition because obviously my heart rate's going up and down all the time. Bipolar could cause me to harm myself one day. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know how poorly you might get, especially if you get psychosis. So, I think you need to have that realisation, like you would if you had diabetes or any other chronic illness. You have to look at the reality of the situation in order to deal with the situation. So that's what I do, but awareness is key.
Yeah.
Awareness is always key. You don't understand something unless somebody educates you on it.
Other than that, I just want to say thanks for being there and just talking about
You're
your
welcome.
bipolar. On the next video, what condition do you think we should discuss next?